to be goat or a fish? Don't sit on the fence.
Stressed, overwhelmed, depressed. Enjoy some relaxation with a meditation on Goat vs. Fish. Many of you will say, oh, I cannot focus on Goat vs. Fish. There are too many distractions out there in the universe. Take, for a versus. Some of you may have noticed that just about here, there's something flickering on the nothingness of Goat vs. Fish. What is it? Is it goat? Is it fish? Why is it like that, Goat vs. Fish? I can't focus on a meditation of Goat vs. Fish when I have this distraction. But you will find in your meditations that there will never be no distractions. Until everyone in the universe has answered the one true question of are you goat or fish and chosen goat or fish, and the great unification of goat and fish can be achieved, there will always be some fenciness in the verses. Fence posts poking predominantly and preposterously at your posterior. But that is no excuse not to meditation on Goat vs. Fish. Meditation is not just about thinking about nothing but Goat vs. Fish. It's about the fancy thoughts entering your ponderings and then leaving again. For when the fence post pokes into your thoughts, did I leave the oven on? Oh no, I have to do some homework. Do they love me? Do they love me not? Or maybe, for some unfancifiable reason, some ancient pondering of memorialization comes back into your verses that you had not thought of in 10 billion millennium. Or maybe you're just thinking about death. All of these things are versible on Goat vs. Fish. But when it becomes a fence post, poking and poking, poking and poking at your brains and making you insane, is when you focus on the fenciness. Rather than focusing on the fancy thought that enters your mind, let it swim through like a fish. The thought comes, the thought goes. The thought fishes, the thought goats. As a goat or a fish that are just passing by one another in the verses, let the fenciness not be the object of your focus, but rather let it go by, let it go by. And you may say to yourself, oh, I have failed at the meditation of Goat vs. Fish. I thought about something that wasn't Goat vs. Fish. And then you may feel shame that you have failed. And then you are thinking about your shame. And then you're thinking about how you're thinking about your shame and how you should be thinking about nothing but Goat vs. Fish. And this is just another fence post poking at you again. Thinking about how you have failed yourself and how you have failed Goat vs. Fish because you weren't just thinking about Goat vs. Fish? That is just another fence post. Let it pass you by, let it pass you by out of your ponderings, through your ponderings. And just return to Goat vs. Fish. That is why we chant Goat vs. Fish when we meditation on Goat vs. Fish. To focus and center ourselves on the mighty verses. And so that all those little fence posts that are poking at you will not be the thing that domination your ponderings, for those fence posts are poking at your ponderings even when you are not meditating on Goat vs. Fish. Yes, You may think it is only during the meditation that these fence posts come out. But no. Those fence posts are poking at you when you're not even thinking about the verses that you're thinking about them. The meditation of Goat vs. Fish exposes these fancy thoughts and feelings too. And there's nothing false about your feelings from Goat vs. Fish. But in the meditation of Goat vs. Fish, let them pass by, and questions like, who is Goat vs. Fish, or what is Goat vs. Fish, or why is Goat vs. Fish? These are not to be pondered in the meditation of Goat vs. Fish, because Goat vs. Fish is Goat vs. Fish, and it is what it is, and it is what it is. This has been quite a conversation about a meditation on Goat vs. Fish, so that Goat vs. Fish may guide you. And re-listen to this guide if ever you wish to know why it is you can't choose a side between goat and fish. It's those fancy thoughts again. So without further offense, let us have a meditation with Goat vs. Fish. In with Goat vs. Fish. Out with Goat vs. Fish. In with Goat vs. Fish. Out with Goat vs. Fish. Goat versus fish, 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 goat versus fish. Goat versus fish, 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 goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. This has been a meditation of Goat versus Fish. Like and subscribe and ring the bell for notification for Goat versus Fish. Are you goat? Or are you fish? Leave a commentation below. What are some of the fancy thoughts that you had during the meditation of Goat versus Fish? Celebration to you for joining the meditation of Goat versus Fish.